I'm on the Upper West Side asking people what they think about the upcoming mayoral election. The primaries are on June 24th, and early voting is starting soon. I'm trying to visit as many different neighborhoods as I can to get people's thoughts on this mayoral election. I'm not campaigning for a specific candidate. I'm just getting general vibe on what people are thinking as the race is heating up. Here's what they had to say. How long have you lived in New York?
For 3 years.
3 years. And who are you planning on voting for?
I'm planning on voting for Zoran.
Can you tell me why?
I believe he has a lot of principles that I really believe in. I like where he stands on freezing rent, making public transit cheap and free, making buses free in particular, and I really like that he stands for a lot of Gen Z beliefs.
What would you say are the Gen Z beliefs?
I'm not going to disclose that because I think I want to keep some of those to myself, but, happy to have a conversation in private.
Well, how did you hear about Zoran's platform? I know he's become, very popular with young people, Gen Z, as you mentioned. How do you think he's reached you as a voter?
Yeah, he reached me because, honestly, by word of mouth. So a lot of my community and my friends started talking about him, and the more I looked into it, the more I really appreciated how well thought out his platform is and how his social messaging appealed to people. It seemed like he was very much ready to listen to New Yorkers and was ready to kind of, not necessarily follow establishment as mayor, but listen to his constituents. And so I really, really respected that.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to add?
Nope. Yeah.
Are you going to be ranking other candidates too, or?
I will be thinking that through. I'm not completely sure on that yet, but I will be ranking Zoran first.
What is your name? Oh, you might want to step back a little bit.
Roger.
Roger, do you live on the Upper West Side?
Yes.
And how long have you lived in New York City?
30 years.
Wow, so you've seen it all.
I've seen some of it, the good and the bad, yes.
So do you have any candidates that you're leaning toward for the mayor's race?
Either the current mayor or maybe Como, I guess, but that's about all I know at this point. I haven't really followed it that closely.
So would you be voting in the Democratic primary then?
I'm registered as a Democrat, so I probably will vote in the Democratic primary, but I'm not quite sure who I would vote for between the two of them at this point.
Okay, so yeah, Eric Adams is not on the Democratic primary. Yeah, you got it. I'm curious, what did you think of Cuomo as governor? Is that kind of one of the reasons maybe you're leaning toward him, or is it familiarity?
I thought he did a good job. He seemed more down the center than many candidates that were either on the left or the right extreme. He got wrapped up in the COVID situation, which didn't play well for him, and then he got some sexual abuse issues, which probably they all have some issues associated with, so that didn't play out well with him either. So I'm open-minded to see what he has to say, and I think Adams has done a good job. So between the two, I'll probably pick one.
And what issues matter to you the most right now as a New Yorker?
Lower taxes, safety, clean streets, fixing some of the potholes. Simple things that they seem to have other priorities on, so just keeping it simple.
Do you plan to vote in the primary, or are you going to wait till the general, you think?
I don't know. I haven't really heard from either Como in any of his debates at all, so I'll probably try and listen to what he has to say and make a decision between the two of them.
Cool. Thank you so much. And
okay.
One more question.
Sure.
Sorry, I don't want to keep you too long. So Zoran Mamdani, he's in second place right now for the Democratic primary. I don't know if you've heard anything about him, but he almost, a new poll came out. I don't know if it's internal polling. He's catching up. It seems he's very popular with young people, but you haven't heard. You haven't heard about him?
No, I'm old. What's his platform?
He's a self-described democratic socialist. Right. He doesn't shy away from the word socialist. Right. His big three things that he tells his supporters and people who canvass for him is that he wants free childcare, fast and free buses, and stabilized rent, or not rent freeze for stabilized apartments, but He just says rent freeze.
Somebody's got to pay.
Yeah.
For his giveaway, so I guess it depends on who's paying the taxes to pay for his agenda. So I think you have to look at that and say, I'm not a landlord, but if you're a landlord in a building, how do you keep the building maintained if people aren't paying their fair share of rent and other people are paying 4 or 5 times the amount? I don't have answers to the questions. I just question who's going to pay for his programs. As a New Yorker, it's expensive to live here, so everybody has to pay something, and other people seem to pay less, others pay disproportionately more, so that's why they have elections, I guess.
Cool. Anything else you want to add, or that's it?
No, it's been great talking to you. Good
Yeah,
luck.
thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm Megan, by the way. What's your name?
My name's Joe Burke.
Nice to meet you. And how long have you lived in New York City?
Since 2019.
All right. And are you a Upper West Side resident?
I live on West 82nd Street.
All right. And who are you leaning toward for mayor?
I would prefer not to vote for any one of the people that are running for mayor right now. I think Adams is doing an adequate job, but I would just say adequate. I think the other choices are no better in terms of the people that are coming in. And I would love to see somebody like Bloomberg come back, but that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Right. And why are you dissatisfied with the choices?
I think they don't spend the money wisely. You have I think, the fourth largest budget in the country, and yet we still always have to be raising our taxes, particularly in terms of the educational system. And then you constantly have understaffing in terms of the police and security forces. So I don't understand how we are spending our money so inefficiently. I think the second part is in terms of just the messaging as to what they're trying to accomplish. The focus on safety and education doesn't seem to be there.
What do you think the candidate? So right now Cuomo is in the top spot, polling in the top spot. How do you feel about him and his message on, you said, safety and education?
I think it's difficult to vote for a person that has been pushed out of office for the actions that he committed previously. He may have great policies and be a very strong politician, but he was pushed out of office for harassing women in the office, and he resigned himself. So I have a tough time supporting someone like that.
All right. Will you be voting in the Democratic primary, or are you going to wait it out, you think?
I am not going to vote in the Democratic primary. I'll vote in the election, but that is it, the November election.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
How long have you lived in New York City?
My whole life, which is pretty long. You don't need to know exactly, but it's many decades. To give you an idea, before I was even old enough to vote, I was a volunteer for the Lindsay for Mayor campaign, and that was 1965. 65.
So we're talking to a New York City expert here.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I've been around.
And what are your thoughts on this upcoming mayor's race?
Well, I love ranked choice voting. I'm so glad we have it. I think we should always have it for every election. And I consider myself a fairly progressive Democrat. I'm leaning, however, toward Andrew Cuomo. Because I know there are issues, but I remember how setting up the Javits Center for COVID vaccine so quickly and so efficiently made a big difference to many of us, so we could get our vaccines. And I think that's wonderful. You know, I do some work in London sometimes, and I'm impressed there at how efficiently capital projects and emergency projects get set up. And that doesn't happen here necessarily, but I think Cuomo is one person who could make that happen, and he did with the Javits Center vaccine project.
Now, a lot of people, he's under investigation right now for his handling of COVID, specifically with nursing homes and the reporting of data. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, there are allegations at this point, but...
Well, I think that was a tragic situation. I think there wasn't enough known at the time to make the right decision, but when I think of COVID and Cuomo, I think, as I said, of the Javits Center vaccine initiative and also of his daily appearances on television to reassure us and tell us the latest data. My mother was a kid in the 40s, I guess, when there was a newspaper strike. And she said Mayor LaGuardia used to read the comics to kids on the radio so that they shouldn't be deprived. So that was her memory of a mayor coming through a crisis. But COVID was more important crisis than reading the comics. And I think Cuomo, despite the nursing home situation, did a really good job.
And so have you read about the other candidates? You said you liked ranked choice voting. Will you be ranking anyone else on your ballot?
Yeah, I haven't fully decided that. One thing the most important thing is that if there is a terrible crisis, we need someone who could handle it. That was an issue in Los Angeles when they had the fires and the mayor was out at a coronation in Ghana or something. She didn't know that in advance. But still, it just does show that you need someone maybe who doesn't agree with you about every single issue or who has some skeletons that are out of the closet, but someone who could really be depended on in a crisis. And so, yeah, I will. I'll probably put Stringer in there just for old time's sake, because he's a nice man and he's been a good public servant. Haven't decided on the others yet, actually.
So you mentioned it's important to have someone who's present in the city. It was interesting during the debates that they held between the candidates. One of the first questions was, will you be making a trip to Israel specifically during your time as mayor? Zohran Mamdani was the only one who said, no, I'm going to stay here. Other candidates said, yes, I will be traveling to Israel. Do you have any thoughts on that? It's okay if you don't have thoughts on it.
Well, I think, I think too much is made of the figurehead position. I think there's a lot of work to do here, and it doesn't matter how one feels about countries that one goes to just for a photo op. You can know these days with media, you can know what's going on without traveling there. So no, I'm definitely not for Mamdani, or is that his name? But I don't think the others have to go to Israel.
So what's your name?
Elise.
Elise, how long have you lived in the city?
I'm from New York. I'm at college out of New York right now, but I grew up here, and I'm 20, so.
Well, did you grow up on the Upper West Side?
Yeah, I grew up by Columbia, and my grandparents live right here.
So what are your thoughts on the mayor's race so far?
Well, I have a couple. I ought to know more about it because I am involved with political organizing, but being at college out of the city hasn't helped with that, although I should know more about it. But I am disappointed in the actions of the current mayor, Eric Adams, and I don't think there would be an end to corruption with Cuomo, who's like leading in the polls.
And so are there other candidates that you're interested in?
Yeah, I'm interested in Zohran Mamdani because he's a leftist, and he's raised an impressive amount of money. But like sort of the results of the presidential election, I don't really trust polls anymore or, speculation prior to the actual election day. And I don't know how much, although I hope, I don't know how much faith I have in, our city electing someone who doesn't come from, a political family like the Cuomos, or doesn't have a ton of super PACs backing them. Also, just the name Cuomo, I feel like someone can get into a ballot box and might not be educated on the election, like I'm sort of not that educated, and just be like, oh, I recognize that name, I'm gonna vote for him.
So you mentioned that you're going to school right now outside of the city. So how did you hear about Zohran and kind of get involved in the race so far?
I do a lot of political organizing, when I'm not at school, on issues like Israel-Palestine and other issues. So I'm sort of in those social circles, and my brother is a big Zohran supporter and has campaigned for him, and I'm going to do some phone banking and maybe some canvassing. So, yeah.
Does it matter to you what the mayor's position is on Israel-Palestine issues?
I think it does, yeah. It's complicated. I'm a Jewish person, and I also think Palestinians ought to live in peace and dignity and have self-determination. So New York has one of the largest Jewish populations outside of Israel, because the United States has something like 50% of the world Jewish population is in the United States, and the other 50%, roughly, there's people that are Jewish that don't live in either country or in Israel, and a lot of those Jewish communities are in New York City. So yeah, I'm curious to see how our thinking as a Jewish community changes on Israel-Palestine over time, and if it will.
Have you been involved in any, also you don't have to answer this, I can cut this out, New York City protests, and what do you think about the city's response to the protests so far?
Yeah, I was just at an anti-ICE protest yesterday, and that was super cool. I went to a trans rights protest when I was in the city over my spring break, and that was cool as well. I had to leave the protest early yesterday because I started seeing colors because I don't think I ate enough before, and I didn't think I had enough water. But after I left, I got home, and my grandparents were watching the news, and I sort of saw on my social media as well there was like an escalation with the cops and the protesters, and that was scary. I definitely could have been there for that, but yeah, I hope the National Guard doesn't get sent in like it was in LA. And I think and they were talking about this at the protest yesterday, but who's sitting in the mayoral office or Gracie Mansion, if they actually live there, is gonna end up mattering a lot for local organizing, like how much that mayor either sides with or doesn't side with the Trump administration and the use of sort of totalitarian force. And yeah, I think it's going to be majorly impactful.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, but you should vote on June 24th and be registered to vote awfully soon, because that's good. And we don't want another mayor who's corrupt, so vote.
There you have it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it.